You're listening to The Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with Lyndia Grant.
Malvo. I'm waiting for Lyndia. But while we wait, I have an opportunity to do what I always do on her program, which is talk about our news. So she will be with us shortly. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, what's going on? It's economics, and nothing but economics. Today, we learned that the unemployment rate, the employment situation is pretty steady, is what I would say. Unemployment rate went up just a tiny bit, not enough to notice. I'm reading the unemployment report and everything says not a noticeable difference. So from 3.5 to 3.6, black unemployment, 5.1, it went down a little bit. No, it went up a little bit. Anyway, what we're seeing is an unemployment situation that we can't really figure out. Because meanwhile, the Fed is saying inflation, and they're very, very concerned. They would have hoped to see unemployment go up just a little bit more. If it did, then they would have been able to say, well, the interest rate modifications we're making have been working. But the last time they raised the federal funds rate, they only raised it by 1/4 point at the beginning of February. That was lower than they've done in the past year. So the economic situation is questionable, but what the good news is that it's not awful. We see a lot of trends that are concerning, but not so concerning that we can start running on a recession bandwagon. Inflation really is the biggest problem, but it's not a problem for everybody. It's interesting. I was looking at the reports this morning. So where we see growth in employment in hospitality, tourism, hotel and restaurant. And that means that people are still spending money. You can say recession, but some people are still spending money. But who's spending money? The people at the top and not the people at the bottom. And so when you look at it that way, retail, people are still going to stores and buying, leisure. So this is a very mixed situation. It's an interesting situation, and it's a situation that's very challenging, but it suggests that the people at the bottom, if you earn less than $50,000 a year, you're having a hard time. If you earn more than $100,000 a year, you're doing okay. And there you have it. Of course, if you're more than 100, you have to make some changes. You might not want to buy as many eggs. Prices up at 70%. You might not want to spend as much money on gas. But if you're at the bottom, you're really scrambling. And that's what this is. So President Biden gave his budget report on yesterday. I liked it, but let's be clear, it's politics. So he wants I wrote the number down. No, $6.8 trillion more. And Lyndia, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, I am. I'm sorry, I just took over your show because you weren't here.
I was here. I was waiting to get plugged in. How are you doing today?
I am wonderful. I was just giving my economic report, and I'll jump off and move on. I know you've got a wonderful guest. in the head of NCNW, the new chair of the board at NCNW, and I give my sister my greetings. So forgive me if the brother said, do you want to open the show up? I said, well, Lyndia's not here. I will.
Thank you, Dr. Juliana. I appreciate you for getting the show going. I appreciate it.
All righty. Well, let me get my 2 more minutes, and then I'll let you go. But no, please, first, let's greet Dr. Lois. So I have the opportunity to say hi to her.
Dr. Lois Keith, are you there yet? Okay. She's not there yet.
All righty. Well, let me finish talking about Brother Biden's budget. It's a very good budget, but we have to understand it's a political budget. So he put everything in there but the kitchen sink. He wants to spend $6.8 trillion. You know what the other people are saying? That's inflationary. But if you look at that budget and break it down, the only problem I have with it is he wants to put more money into defense. And I call defense offense because war is offensive. But he wants to give more money to Pell Grants, more money to health care, more money to moms, to child care. It's a good budget, but it's not going to pass. So what it really is a campaign tool. He can take this budget and he can run and say, this is what I'm in favor of, but he knows Republicans aren't going to pass it. So he's correct. I'm glad that he did it because he's laying some things out. So let's give him credit for that. We can always give him credit for that. So this is not economics as much as it is politics. The economics is the unemployment rate, but the politics is that Biden has laid out a budget, a very comprehensive budget that he knows the Republicans are not going to agree with. The debt ceiling, what's his name, McCarthy, they've already said they're not negotiating. Now, they're going to have to negotiate a little bit. We're not going to shut government down. We're not going to default on our international obligations. But what they're saying is, look, we need more. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, just last thing, Lyndia, and then I'm going to let you and Dr. Keith have it, and I would like the opportunity to say yo to her. But you're 45, the previous president. He is not only ruining the Republican Party, but he's ruining himself. Every time he opens his mouth, he loses grace. Iowa now, his polls are down in Iowa, and I imagine they'll be down in other places as well. Last week, CPAC met, the Conservative Political Action Committee. He, of course, was not there. He had his own little meeting. He had his own meeting. Meanwhile, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, and Ron DeSantis, and a number of others are just gearing up to run for president on the Republican side. What's interesting is that all of them are like kind of Trump in different faces. Nikki Haley, in my opinion, is Trump in a dress. Ron DeSantis is Trump going to charm school. In other words, he's much nicer than Trump, but he still says some of the same things. Tim Scott, well, that's just Tim Scott. And so we've had a really interesting political week, but for me, of course, as an economist, the more interesting thing for me has been the economy. So that's it for me this week, Lyndia.
All right, Dr. Juliana, I'm so sorry I didn't get a chance to introduce you. I want you all to know Dr. Juliana is Dean at Cal State Los Angeles. She's one of 2 President Emeritus at Bennett College. She has her PhD in economics, which you just heard. She's a world traveler, speaker, president of Push Excel, the youth organization founded by the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson out of Chicago, Illinois. And we thank you for being our guest today, Dr. J.
Thank you, Lyndia and Keith. I know you're going to have a wonderful program. And then greeting, Dr. Keith.
Thank you very much.
All right. You listen to the Lyndia Grant Show. We're going to go to a commercial break. And when we return, we'll be talking to the new chair of the board of directors of the National Council of Negro Women. Her name is Dr. Lois Keith, and she's from Atlanta, Georgia. Right now, we're going to go ahead and talk to Dr. Keith. How are you today, Dr. Keith? I just want to say hi to you and get started talking to you right now.
I am doing very well, thank you.
Excuse us for having a few technical problems, but I'm glad I have you here. Let's talk about your role at the National Council of Negro Women. Dr. Keith, tell us when you were elected. It's something new that just happened, isn't it?
Absolutely. I was elected on December the 2nd at 12:29 p.m. at the 60th National Convention that was held in Washington, D.C., as the chair of the board of the National Council of Negro Women.
And were you already on that board, or are you coming in from the outside?
No, I am not coming in from the outside. I have been a part of the board for years, and I have held, I guess, most elected offices with the organization, with the exception of maybe financial secretary or treasurer, something along that line. But I came up basically through the ranks.
Okay, very good. Well, then tell us when you first got started, because I used to work with Dorothy Height back in the 90s, early 80s when I first got started. And I was down there all the time helping with her teleconference. Tell us a little bit about your beginning at the National Council.
Well, actually, my beginnings really started in my local section where I was very actively involved in the DeKalb section of the National Council of Negro Women. In that particular section, I held all of the elected offices except, again, treasurer and financial secretary. And then I decided that I would move to the national level, still being active, of course, in my local section. And I first started off by working on the nominating or serving on the nominating committee. And then from there, I served as member at large. And from member at large, I went to assistant secretary. From there, I served as chair of membership and then co-chair of membership. I served as vice president. And now I am serving as the chair of the board.
All right. That is so exciting. I love your excitement. I know your group in Atlanta is listening. I want to say hello to your Atlanta team. I saw a beautiful post from them. You want to say hi to your colleagues down in Atlanta, Georgia.
Absolutely, absolutely. They are the reason I am where I am today. And I want to say hello, a shout out to the metropolitan Atlanta, all of Georgia, all of the state of Georgia, and particularly the DeKalb section of the National Council of Negro Women.
Okay, well, we're going to come back and talk some more. We're going to go to our commercial break now. I think we got our commercials ready. And when we return, we're going to talk about your future plans of what you have in mind for the National Council of Negro Women as far as your role working with the president as the board chair. We're going to go to a commercial break, and we'll be back in a moment.
Honestly, my care coach at AmeriHealth changed my life. I quit going to the doctor a long time ago. I was tired of leaving the doctor confused by all the medical talk with no explanation. It was frustrating. I didn't have anybody to help me understand stuff or give me advice. So like I said, I just stopped going.
So what changed for you?
My care coach. Having one-on-one support from someone through AmeriHealth really helped me. She cared about me so much and listened to me too. What I love the most is that she walks me through the options and breaks things down, so I really understand. She even calls just to check on me. Because of her, I feel like I finally get it, and I can take care of myself. But if I need her, she's always there.
AmeriHealth cares, and we believe our members deserve a care coach. Just call us at 1-877-759-6224 to get connected to your care coach. 1-877-759-6224. This program is funded in part by the government of the District of Columbia Department of Healthcare Finance. Mayor Muriel Bowser.
This is Frank Smith with the African American Civil War Museum in Washington, D.C., located at 1925 Vermont Avenue Northwest on the Green Line. Did you know that a recent study found that children who visit museums do better in school and in life than children who do not? So parents, teachers, and preachers, let's get moving. I promise you, if you bring your children to the African American Civil War Museum, they will be inspired by the images that they see. They will be impressed by our living history reenactors who are always available, and they will be involved in our scavenger hunt that takes them throughout our exhibit. That's the African American Civil War Museum, 1925 Vermont Avenue. Our hours are 10 to 6:30 on weekdays, 12 to 4 on Saturdays and Sundays. See it. Be inspired.
Washington Informer religion columnist Lyndia Grant.
Ida B. Wells, born into enslavement, was a journalist and activist. An avid reader, she read through the entire Bible many times. Wells was once asked to leave the ladies' car and sit in the colored train. She refused and train officials pushed her. Ida B. Wells retaliated but was pushed off the train at the next stop. A crowd of whites applauded. She vowed to get even. 3 of her close friends were lynched for opening businesses that cut into profits of whites. Everything changed for Wells. She spoke out internationally against lynching of blacks for the rest of her life. Through her efforts, lynching in America nearly disappeared by the time of her death. And NAACP founder, we salute Ida B. Wells for Women's History Month.
Read more in the religion column of the Washington Informer, an award-winning African-American newspaper. We don't report crime or gossip, just positive news. Pick up the Washington Informer or visit us online at WashingtonInformer.com. Call 202-561-4100 for more information.
All right, we're back. You're listening to the Lyndia Grant Show here on Spirit 1340 WYCB. Today is Friday, March 10th, 2023, and we are talking with the new board chair of the National Council of Negro Women. She's from Atlanta, Georgia, and has been working with the National Council for many years and many roles, as she talked about prior to our commercial break. Let's go back to Dr. Lois Keith. Dr. Keith, you there?
Yes, I am.
All right. Now let's talk about future plans for what you think is coming up down at the National Council of Negro Women.
Well, we are very excited about what is happening with the National Council of Negro Women. And before I go any further, I have to do another shout out for our national president, Reverend Siobhan Arline Bradley, who is my partner in this walk with putting NCNW or carrying NCNW to another level. She's a dynamite person, and we work very well together, and we tease each other, and we say that we are hooked at the hip. But my vision for NCNW is for this organization to soar. We want it to soar to heights that they are unimaginable. And I really envision for NCNW to be a powerhouse or clearinghouse on issues like social justice and public policies. And, you know, I don't want to just do away or ignore the programs that are already in place, but I want to be able to enhance and to build on many of the programs that are already in place at the headquarters. For an example, the STEM program, and we want to make certain that we are educating our youth. And, of course, we want to build on entrepreneurship and creating other programs that would be pertinent to the growth and the development of the National Council of Negro Women. When it comes to health and everything that's surrounding health and wellness, we want to make certain that we are focused and that we are on the forefront of bringing awareness to those issues to our membership. We want to make certain that our youth and that our young adults are empowered and ready to take the mantle and be able to carry NCNW to the next level.
All right, that sounds exciting. I love when you talk about health in particular. If you ever need anybody to help you out with type 2 diabetes, I have a program that I administer along with AmeriHealth because I lost my mom from complications of type 2 diabetes on Christmas Day in the year 2000. So although it has been over 22 years, Dr. Keith, I write a lot about it in my column in the Washington Informer, and I like to have doctors on. In fact, it's time for me to get some doctors on now because what we didn't know, we want to make sure that listeners know that they can actually bring their A1C down. So health is one of the most important things we can talk about, especially given this era of baby boomers that we got coming along right now. And I'm one of them. But I'm doing good, and I praise God and thank Him. So let's talk a little bit more about what you might want to do with some of the health affairs.
Well, just recently I was in Atlanta and I attended a workshop on health issues that were surrounding men in our community, and particularly developing premature early cancer of the lungs from smoking cigarettes or cigars and what have you. And I left very much aware of what was happening with our men, and that is just one of the initiatives that we were talking about. And you mentioned diabetes, and of course we know diabetics and diabetes is one of the main sources in our communities that are crippling our young as well as our older citizens. And there are other heart conditions, and making people aware of issues surrounding our hearts and making certain that we eat the right food, that we exercise properly. So around health, there is so much that we can talk about it, and especially when it comes to the disparities amongst our people, African Americans.
In fact, Dr. Keith, I remember how upsetting it was to me when COVID was in the midst of just killing up people all over the world. It kept coming out that people who had major illnesses, like in the African American community, were dying in greater numbers. And that concerned me. I don't know how true it is. I think it might be. I don't know. Because I know people in my personal life that I did lose and family members. But I just want to say that helping us understand how we can better care for our health matters. And so I'm glad that that's one of the focuses that you all have for something that's coming up in the future at the National Council. Why don't you give us your closing comments for your role as chair down at the NCNW?
Well, one of the things that I have been involved with for years, in fact, I received the charge from Dr. Dorothy Irene Height, and that is to be the national membership chair. Even though I am no longer the national membership chair, membership is my passion when it comes to NCNW. It's the lifeblood of NCNW, if I may. And for the organization to thrive and to move forward, we will definitely have to make certain that our membership is up and running. And we want to encourage younger women to become a part of the National Council of Negro Women. We don't want NCNW to be thought of as being the old woman organization. We want to bring the young women, our youth, and introduce them to the National Council of Negro Women. And with what we have in place with our President Bradley, we will definitely be able to attract our younger women and bring them on board with the National Council of Negro Women. They have so much to offer, as well as the women that have been a part of NCNW for years. And if I may say, perhaps if I have time, Dr. Janetta Cole, one of the things she wanted was for the older women to be able to work with the younger women. And she identified or talked about the older women being the root of the tree or the trunk of the tree, and I might be paraphrasing a little bit. And then the younger women to be the wings of the tree, or in my opinion, the leaves, and to keep the organization going.
And the branches, yes, indeed.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being our guest today, Dr. Lois.
It was my honor.
And I am so glad to have. I look forward to meeting you in person, Dr. Keith.
Well, exactly, and the same here.
All right. Thank you for being my guest today. All right. You're listening to the Lyndia Grant Show. We are about to go to our close now. I ask that you would subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Facebook. Read the Religion Corner in the Washington Informer newspaper. This week, I wrote another column. God gave it to me. My spirit is always darkest just before dawn. Pick that column up. If you feel like you're going through some hard times, we hope that it will give you some words of encouragement. If you have some show ideas and you want to do something on the Lyndia Grant Show, feel free to give us a call at 240-602-6295. Again, that number is 240-602-6295. We hope this show today with the National Council of Negro Women, Dr. Lois Keith, has been helpful to you. It was founded by Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, and in most recent years, we all remember the legacy of my friend, Dr. Irene Height. Next week, we will have another great show for you right here on Spirit 1340 WYCB. Every Sunday, join us at the All Nations Baptist Church. We are having a special program every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. during our Sunday Enrichment School. You can hear Dorothy Elliott or Reverend Hugh Terry lead us in some Sunday school discussion. Our church is located at number 2 Rhode Island Avenue, Northeast Washington, D.C., where our pastor is the Reverend Dr. James Coleman. We invite you to join us every Sunday at 10 a.m. I'm going to close now. Words, thoughts, and deeds have a boomerang effect. So be careful what you send out. Scripture says, my people perish for the lack of knowledge. So think on these things. From the Lyndia Grant Show, I'm your host, Lyndia Grant. Until next week, good day.
Thank you for listening to the Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with your host, Lyndia Grant.